Hi, I'm Heather from GG Stitching, and today we're going to talk about sewing machines. We have been talking about getting started in quilting and the tools that you will need to get going to have a successful quilt project. And so one of those things is your sewing machine. Unless you're going to hand piece, which I can do a video about later if you'd like. If you don't have a sewing machine but you would like to get started, let me know and I will do that video sooner rather than later. But otherwise, sewing machines. What do you need in your sewing machine to be able to piece successfully? It's got to sew a straight stitch. End of video. But really, if you're going to be piecing, and so there's two different phrases here that we're going to be talking about. Piecing, which is taking all of those pieces of fabric that you've cut up, sewing them together to make your new shape. That's piecing. And then quilting is at the end when we're sewing through all three layers, that quilt top, your batting, and your backing in order to secure them. That's quilting. So those are two different things that your sewing machine can do. And so depending on what you want to do, that will make a difference in the kind of sewing machine that you get. Otherwise, you just need to be able to sew a straight stitch. I am sewing on a 20-year-old Bernina 165 here. At home, I have a Bernina 200, also over 20 years old, and then a Singer Featherweight because I just love those. 1943, I think. That's all it does is a straight stitch, and it pieces beautifully. So the main difference between all of them would be your throat space here. So that's one of the things that you'll consider, and we will be talking about that. The feet are also something that you want to pay attention to. If the machine is not branded as a quilting type of machine, it may not have the feet that we need, although you can buy them as an add-on. And so one of those feet would be the 1/4 inch seam foot, and I will make some pictures of them and put them up. But basically all the machines will have a 1/4 inch seam foot, so that way you have a guide that you can use the edge of the foot, and it makes a 1/4 inch seam. We'll talk about that later in another video about how to get a perfect 1/4 inch seam. Just because a machine has a 1/4 inch foot doesn't necessarily mean it makes a small enough seam for us, and so we will talk about that. The other thing to consider is that if you go online, you have an older machine, you go online from Amazon and you just buy a generic 1/4 inch seam foot, it may not be calibrated properly to your machine, and so don't count on it being a perfect 1/4 inch. You'll still want to check your seams, and that will be a separate video. So 1/4 inch seam foot for your piecing. When it gets to the quilting part, you want to have a walking foot, and a walking foot is this bulky foot, has a little arm on it that this sits with the needle bar in between here. And basically a walking foot has an extra set of feed dogs at the top, so that, or it's an even feed foot, so that way when you're working with bulkier fabrics and multiple layers, not only do you have the feed dogs on the bottom, but now you have feed dogs on the top so that you get an even feed. So this is important if you're going to quilt yourself. This also works really well with fleece and things like that, bulkier things, denim. I mean, this is a great foot. It can be a bit pricey, but it is worth it. It will save you a lot of hassle. This is what we'll be using for our basic baby quilt because it is easier to do straight quilting than it is to do free motion quilting, and we'll talk about that later. But that also brings us to free motion quilting feet or darning feet. Once again, if the machine is branded as a quilting series, it may have those feet already. You do not need the free motion quilting or darning foot for what we're doing to get started. That is a little more advanced quilting, but I wanted you to know that they are out there and those are quilting feet. And if they come with your machine, great. But otherwise, 1/4 inch foot, you're going to want that. If you can't find one, when we set up our machine in our beginner videos, I'm going to show you how to get a 1/4 inch foot or 1/4 inch seam, even if you don't have the foot. So don't panic if you don't have the foot yet. You can still do this. But if you have one for your machine, that's wonderful. And then, of course, the walking foot. This one's going to be a little more pricey, but I tell you, it is worth the investment. The other thing to consider is really then about what you need from the machine. Do you want decorative stitches? Don't you want decorative stitches? Some of the decorative stitches are nice when you're doing machine stitching your binding on and making it look pretty. I mean, they're nice, but it is not a must-have. This one also has what we call a knee lift that sits right in here. And what this does, it lets you do hands-free sewing. So when you're going along and you might need to pivot or go over a little bump, you can actually lift your foot up hands-free by using the needle bar. This is lovely. Typically, those don't come up on a machine until they're a little more higher priced. Other than that, that is really all you need to get started with your machine, I swear. A good straight stitch. And if you get one off of Marketplace or a garage sale, anything like that, I would make sure that you take it to a sewing machine place, a repair place, and let them do a service. Make sure that it's cleaned and working properly before you start. That is going to help make sure that you don't break anything the first time that you do it, and that it's in working condition, because that's going to save you a lot of frustration. Frustration will probably be the first thing that will derail you from learning quilting and something new, because if you can't just sit down and sew, it isn't fun. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you found this helpful, please like the video, subscribe, give me a comment, and let me know that the content that I'm creating for you is helpful. But otherwise, I am Heather, GG Stitching. I can't wait for us to get quilting.